back in the day, remember when the whole anti-Asian hate crime spate in the wake of COVID? Hey, predominantly, I'm not saying anything controversial. The demographics of that is that it was most likely Black Americans doing this to Asians, but the narrative had to be it's somehow Whitey's fault, so they didn't even report on that at the time.
We have this story from the BBC. Fatal stabbing of Ukrainian refugee in North Carolina ignites crime debate. That's what they're calling it. They're calling it a crime debate. There's another video that's popped up that I'm not entirely sure that I can play. I don't think I can. My God. There's a video showing the moment the young girl was stabbed. And it's actually rather terrifying because I don't think she realized that she was just killed. I don't think she even knows. I don't know if I can play this video. It's rough. They new footage of the Iryna Zarurtska stabbing, and after he stabs her, she looks down and she just sits there. Yesterday on Fox News, Will Cain brought up the numbers, interracial crime. I'm gonna pull that up for you right now, igniting this debate. Now, certainly many people are claiming that the debate is simply, is crime actually bad? Well, we know the media is lying. We know the media has lied, and I'll break it down for you before we get into the numbers on the interracial crime stats. Axios is a great example. Axios Charlotte in January wrote how homicide is up 25% in Charlotte, how people fear crime as it gets worse, how the government has even stated that it's getting worse. The other day, Axios wrote, it's only the video, the perception of the crime, the perception. No, in reality, crime is getting bad, and they say that's the debate. But I have this post for you. Following the Will Cain show, many people are pointing out, holy crap, Fox News is going there? Well, yeah. There's a conversation to be had about racism in this country, and it goes every direction. The left has long told us only white people are racist. So I asked ChatGPT, who stated, in 2022, there were 435,480 black on white violent incidents compared to 96,550. Showing a 462.8% increase in black on white incidents versus white on black. They say that shows 26 times higher likelihood that a black person will attack a white person. The issue here is that you have black people who are racist and will attack white people, and that's a problem. It is equally a problem when racist white people attack black people. I think the racism is equal in it being bad. However, we have a 26 times higher likelihood, adjusted for population, that a black person will attack a white person. Why is the media not allowing us to have that conversation? I don't think anybody should disparage or discriminate on the basis of race. Again, racism is not good. And the racism problem appears to be more so black on white. For the longest time, big tech, social media companies have banned anybody who tried to bring this up, when the reality is simply this. Certain groups of people, there are racists, and it is bad. We shouldn't tolerate it. Well, to carry on this narrative, we're going to be joined by our friend and consistent recurring guest, Viva Frei. I'm curious what he thinks about this as the conversation has expanded on social media. So we'll be grabbing that gentleman now. We are loading things up. Viva!
Tim, how goes the battle?
It goes well. How about yourself?
Can you believe the world in which we're living? I mean, you try to stay up to date with the news. You can never do it, and it's always worse than you initially thought it was.
Yeah. Oh, come on, man. We're all blackpilling over here. I try to have, look, who am I to talk, right? Every day I'm talking about something that's dark, something that's negative. But there is this debate on crime that's popped up, which has gotten really interesting. And obviously with the stabbing of the murder of Iryna Zarurtska, the media's attempt at ignoring and covering this up. What has been exposed here? The big picture. I'll start here. Will Cain show. Shout out to the Will Cain show on Fox News. He brings up interracial crime stats showing that black on white violence is 2-to-1 to white on black violence. Now, some people have tried claiming, they say, yeah, but white on white and black on black are the majority of it. Well, we understand that. The issue that I'm seeing here is when you get a George Floyd incident, a white cop kills a black man. When you get a Jacob Blake incident, white cop kills a black man. You get protests, you get riots. Even if it's a Hispanic neighborhood watch, Zimmerman, who takes the life of Trayvon Martin, you get mass protests and they call him white. But when you get, and this happens more often, black racists attacking white people or racially motivated crimes from black people against white people, the media won't talk about it. They'll cover it up. They'll call you racist. And now it seems that, for whatever reason, the pendulum is swung and people are now able to talk about it without getting banned. I'm curious your thoughts on everything that's going on with the media and the narrative. What's happening?
Well, it's an amazing thing. I just, as a science experiment, Googled Charlotte killer or Charlotte murder, whatever. The first image that comes up is Donald Trump from a political article. It's insidious. The first article that comes up is the New York Times. I call it a fluff piece, but it's a Republicans pounce on yet another vicious murder on the subway system, where they prosecuted the Daniel Pennies for subduing the exact same individual that goes on when, not subdued, to stabbing someone in the neck.
The figurative, you mean figuratively the same person, right?
I say a crazy person who happens to be black. I mean, the reality is people are going to focus on the racial element of this. I'm going to focus on the mental illness element of this. The man was a violent career criminal with a history of mental illness. How that man absorbs a decade's worth of media blaming white people for everything is exactly how the media knows a crazy person is going to absorb that. It's sort of like MK Ultra, except the media version.
And real quick, on top of that, a social justice narrative that results in judges saying, "Oh, you poor black man, let me let you go." To the rest of us, I don't care about his race. He's crazy.
Crazy, violent, with a history of violent crimes, and you get a judge. The fact that the judge happens to be black is really not going to help any of the narrative here, who also has allegedly, according to some reports today, an indirect or an interest in treatment clinics, letting this guy go on a promise to appear after having such violent crimes as, possession of a gun in the hands of a felon, assaulting his sister. And then the guy calls up the cops and says that there's a man-made chip in me controlling me. And this guy's either not behind bars or an institution. It's a failed system. It tends to be a failed system in soft on crime blue cities that exist within red states. The amazing thing about the racism element of this, and now people are finally allowed to observe what the FBI had stopped tracking by way of demographics of violent crimes. Back in the day, remember when the whole anti-Asian hate crime spate in the wake of COVID? Predominantly, I'm not saying anything controversial. The demographics of that is that it was most likely Black Americans doing this to Asians. But, the narrative had to be it's somehow Whitey's fault. So they didn't even report on that at the time.
They dropped the hashtag. The activists that were pushing the Stop Asian Hate, once people started to realize that all the videos going viral were black people attacking Asians, the leftists just dropped it.
It is, look, the reality is there are statistics that are undeniable out there. And I am aware of what they refer to as the racist trope, the 1352, which is 13% of the population accounts for, the American population accounts for 52% of the violent crime. And then people are, rightly observing it's even worse than that. It has nothing to do with the 13% of the general population being black. It's inner city crime where you have repeat offenders who account for the vast majority of that crime. And so it's not 1352, it's probably like 252. And it may or may not be, you could focus on the black element of it, but it is just repeat violent criminals within blue cities that don't get put behind bars where they deserve to be. And so maybe it's all coming to a head now. It takes a Ukrainian refugee getting stabbed in the neck unprovoked by a schizophrenic black man, by the circumstance of the story, with a history of criminality and mental illness, who was let out on a verbal promise to appear by a judge who has an indirect or direct interest in treatment clinics. I mean, this is the type of, this is being reported today. I'm going to, do my best to verify it as much as I can. But this is what it takes for people to say, holy crab apples. The idiots politicians who promote these bleeding heart, forgive the criminals, it's not their fault policy. They have armed guards, they have security. The judges, they sure as hell have security. They're not the ones who are the victims of their policy. And it's how bad does it have to get? Bongino always said, is it bad enough yet? Is it bad enough yet? A Ukrainian war refugee comes to America and is stabbed to death on the subway in Charlotte, North Carolina. It might have gotten bad enough now for some people.
Did you see the video that just emerged? So the video that came out showing the incident, they omitted the point of contact when this deranged man stabbed her. It shows him stand up and swing his arm and then freezes.
Black. Yeah.
And then it cuts to the next moment where he's walking the train. We now got more footage showing not the point where he stabs her, but literally immediately after. And it is horrifying because people don't. I can't show a video of a young woman who's about to die. But people, New York Post has it. They don't get it. When you get shot, when you get stabbed, you don't know. And in this video, what's so horrifying is this young woman is cowering. She looks up at him as he walks away, and then she puts her hand in her face. She doesn't even know. She was just delivered a lethal strike to the neck. She's not even bleeding yet. And then you can see him walk away with blood dripping in the later videos. There have been so many stories where people ask, was I shot? Was I stabbed? And because of movies, really because of movies, people think that when you get shot, you just collapse, you're dead instantly. That's how every movie goes. They go bang, 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 and people just fall and drop dead as if it was a headshot. So many instances, there have been people who are shot and they don't realize it, and a few minutes later, they'll collapse. And that's really terrifying, this video. I don't know. It's just scary.
And I don't want to see it. I can't imagine being the relatives of the victim, and now the gruesome murder of their loved one is on the internet for gawkers to gawk at, trolls to make jokes at, and politicians to politicize. You remember back in the day, it was Andy No put out it was a tweet of a video in Australia, I think, and there was a knife fight in some subway, and the guy just gets struck once in the neck, and you bleed to death in 20 seconds. Like the amount of blood that comes out of a jugular or the carotid artery.
Yeah.
It's horrifying. It's nauseating. Stabbing in particular is particularly graphic. I mean, the idea of like sharp metal going into soft flesh, it's just disgusting. And the woman sitting there, I say, people on the one hand need to be aware of their surroundings at all times. It's situational awareness at all times. And it's not a question of being paranoid or neurotic. It's a reality. But it's horrifying. This video is going to be out there for an eternity now to continue to re-injure the survivors, the victims the family members of this victim. It's horrendous, but people need to see it in order to understand how quick it happens, what it looks like, and the consequences of these blue city policies. They are real, they are devastating, and the people putting them in force don't have to live with the consequences.
There's a new The Talk. These liberal activists like to talk about what was called the talk, and it was fake and it was a lie the whole time. So in the past 10 or so years, liberals would claim that black families would have the talk with their kids about how you got to act around police, how police brutality, all of these things. And they made these viral videos where it's like the black father is talking to his kid and he says, it's time to have the talk. And they were implying that cops were racist and white supremacists. And it was weird to me from the south side of Chicago where I was like, I had the same talk. All of the kids in my neighborhood had the same talk. Here's how you behave. Here's what you have to do. Here's how the cops are going to act. Here's what you got to do. And these uppity, well-to-do liberals were telling the world, oh, it's only the black people have to do this. And I'm like, everybody should have a talk about how you behave around police, what happens, why the police behave the way they do. There's a new kind of talk. Parents need to tell their children when going into these cities, Democrat-run cities, to keep one eye open, to constantly be checking over your shoulder, to have situational awareness, to know your exits. Now, to be fair, I think any good parent's going to teach their kids basic situational awareness. When I was a kid, my dad would always do that. We'd walk, he was a firefighter, right? We walk into a bar and he'd go, where are the exits? And I'd look and I'd be like, there, and there's like, always know your exits. Because as a firefighter, so many people die because they couldn't find the way out. But now with this young woman, she thought she was safe. I mean, the narrative was, it's the white supremacists you got to watch out for, not the black man who is just an innocent victim of the system. Now parents are going to have to make sure, if you've got a young daughter who's traveling alone on the subway, you explain to her, Know your exits, know who you're standing next to, and be ready. You could be attacked.
And sit with your back to the wall. Don't let people sit behind you. There was a case of this it wasn't in Montreal. It was in Canada a while back on a Greyhound bus. A schizophrenic guy who happened to be Chinese. Race is not the determinant element here. It's mental illness. Was on a Greyhound bus and went to the bathroom, came back with a knife and decapitated the guy sitting next to him. And then, cut his body apart. Total psychotic delusion that he had to separate the body parts to prevent it from coming back together. But if you can avoid public transit, avoid it. If you're going to do it, be aware of who's sitting behind you, where you are. And, Tim, you make the joke. I had the talk. My dad says when cops pull you over, it's thank you, sir. Be polite. Don't be an idiot.
Hands on the wheel. You take the keys out, you put your wallet and the keys on the dash, grab your insurance, put it on the dash, hands on the steering wheel, roll the window down, dome light on, radio off. And when they walk up and ask for it, you grab it right in front of you and hand it to them. That's what I was taught when I was a kid.
It's common sense. The only problem is that it's not, the irony is that reality is the inverse of, or say the media is the inverse of reality.
Yep.
They weren't having the talk of how to comply with police officers. The media was telling them, you don't have to comply with police officers because whenever you get pulled over, it's an act of racism, not law enforcement. I got pulled over. I got stopped coming out of my own house in Montreal. And a cop, I looked suspicious. I'm wearing a down jacket, come running outside. I'm like, I was going to say, is it because I'm black? No, it's not, because I'm obviously not black. Is it because I'm Jewish? Oh, who knows? They would have to have a good eye to be able to detect that. But it's indoctrinated to say, if it happens to a black person, it's because of racism. But if it happens to anybody else, well, it's just law enforcement. I think Daniel Shaver, you remember the execution by the SWAT team of Daniel Shaver when they swatted his hotel? Nobody talked about that. Nobody cried racism there. It's motivated reasoning. They look at it and they say, if race is involved, then we'll make it racial, even if it's not clear from its face, even if it's a black cop who's involved, because that's institutionalized racism. But when it's a black guy now saying, I killed the whitey, what was he now alleged to have said in the video? He said, I got that white girl.
Wow.
And I hadn't heard that yesterday. Apparently he's dripping blood, says, I got that white girl, because he's a paranoid schizophrenic.
Wait, the guy on the train said that?
Yes, this is the latest reporting as of today. If it's wrong, it's not my reporting.
It's not the first time we've heard this. There have been other reported instances where a black person killed a white person and said it was because they were targeting white people. And I'll say this. I'm glad we can finally have honest conversations. You used to get banned from any social platform for even showing FBI crime stats. The left wanted to create the narrative that only white people were racist. The reality is Asians are racist. Oh boy, let me tell you how racist Asians can be. Go to Southeast Asia and have a conversation with the Korean and the Japanese. Black people can be racist. And you know what? White people can be racist too. And when they came out and we would talk about the crime in our neighborhoods and how there are racist black people who intentionally target white people and Asians and Jews, they would say, ban, can't say it. Stop Asian hate. Pointed out that there were black people who were racist attacking Asians. Stop the hashtag, don't bring it up again. You had the knockout game in New York where Jews were attacked. Like it was young black men that would run up and beat and attack Jewish people. The left would ban you if you would put this narrative out there. So it's actually quite simple. Black people, hey, no problem. White people, no problem. Asians, no problem. Racists, problem. But the left was protecting the racists so long as they were not white.
Well, the ultimate irony, I mean, it's not even an irony. It is the racism of racializing that so you can't talk about it, because I would imagine, and I think there's empirical or at least observational evidence to support it, the black community is the one that would want to have this discussion among themselves. The black on black violence is itself an epidemic that needs to be resolved. Is it because of race? Is it because of fatherless homes? I mean, there's an overlap there. And when you prevent having these discussions, you prevent any meaningful social, not repair, but correction. And all that you end up doing is not even empowering, but rationalizing, not addressing it, because anybody who seeks to address it in an open and honest manner is a racist. When the FBI stopped classifying stats based on that the racial component, that is institutionalized racism.
Yep.
And what happens is you say, we're not to blame. The community's not to blame. They're all victims of their own violence, like up in Canada where, they claim that there's an indigenous genocide going on because indigenous men are killing indigenous women, but that's the result of white oppression. It's the same rationale here. And so you further victimize the community that themselves want more policing. It's the white liberals who don't want more policing in high crime areas. If you have more black people being pulled over by cops in high crime areas, it might just have to do with who happened to be the perpetrators, likely or not, of
Right.
violence, so of criminality. But when you cripple the police's ability to do it, you demonize the police that do it, you prosecute the innocent bystanders who save lives. The communities that suffer the most, incidentally, are the black communities. But now that it's randos on subways, well, everyone's going to be up in arms, and rightly so. The discussion has to happen. It's been far too long that it's been suppressed. In fairness, some people do trollingly racialize everything, like, racialize incidents that have no racial component to it, other than the fact that one is black and one is white.
Yeah.
But when the mentally ill schizo is saying, "I got that white girl," probably because he's been listening to Keith Olbermann and Rachel Maddow for the last 10 years, you can't not understand that there is a problem. These dog whistles have been heard, and the MSM apparatus, New York Times, Politico, CNN, not covering it, and then covering it only to ostensibly blame Trump or Republicans for pouncing. There's a big problem. It's multifaceted, but it's about time to put it on super mega blast.
There's a viral clip of Nick Fuentes going around where he says he doesn't want to live near black people. And he actually goes on to say he's not saying individual black people are bad or are problems, anything wrong with them, but everybody talks about black neighborhoods and everybody knows what's being said. And the problem with the social media is that they stopped this conversation from happening, which results in overt racism. So I put it like this. I'm from Chicago, and I can tell you, where I grew up, north of 47th Street was all black, and that's largely where the crime was. And the perpetrators of crime in our neighborhood largely came from those neighborhoods. I did not think it is because they are black. I thought it was because they were in gangs and criminals and recruited and had criminal organizations operating out of these areas. Because we also in Chicago have Hyde Park, which has twice the national average of the black population and is one of the nicest neighborhoods in Chicago and actually has less crime than my white neighborhood. So we understand there was a nuance to it. And what ends up happening due to I think there is going to be, there's always some nature, there's always some, racial, ethnic, or genetic component in everything. But I do think nurture largely determines this. And the left stopped us from having these conversations. We had a conversation yesterday as doing pre-production for IRL. I understand the arguments from all the race realists about how the stats show IQ or show whatever. And I'm like, listen, I'll tell you this. White, black, Asian, Mexican, or otherwise, raised by a disciplined military family, they are going to have disciplined military kids. The race does not matter. There are probably going to be deviations based on I wouldn't necessarily want to say race, but genetics, which does have a racial component. But I truly believe with proper discipline, good parenting, and cultural intervention in bad areas, we can stop all of this. But when the left tells us we're not allowed to talk about the crime coming from the black communities into other areas, how can you ever actually address the cultural issues that create the perception of racism? That create racism when they censor you and shut you down and you can't talk about it.
The single parent households, I think, is probably the biggest issue. Then people are going to say, well, there's statistical overrepresentation in the black community. To say that that's because they're black, I mean, a genetic component, I think, is idiotic. To say that there's sort of a cultural historical component about the laws that bleeding heart liberals have put into place that sort of incentivized, children out of wedlock, I think the argument lies there. But the bottom line, single parent households, whatever the race, you're maximizing the odds of problematic outcomes. Tim, have you ever seen the movie Harold and Kumar Escape from Guantanamo Bay?
I think I did, yeah.
Just to cite a classic, there's the scene where I think it's Kumar who's like scared of some thuggy looking people on the street. And he's like, I'm not scared of them because they're black. I'm scared of them because they're scary. I've been to plenty white areas where I'm situational awareness on full force. I've been to several campgrounds that I drove in and drove out of, and if the races were reversed, someone would have said that's racism. Areas that look safe, people that look safe.
Yep.
And when the issue becomes when you treat individuals based on the statistical overrepresentations of the communities, that's when racism occurs. But when it comes to a matter of survival and logical behavior, you're not going to go into high crime areas, regardless of what race or ethnicity happen to live in those high crime areas. The issue is that there are certain cultural phenomenon or trends that have existed for years that you haven't been able to discuss them, address them, or have a meaningful, thoughtful discussion on them. And, part of that is single parent households, children out of wedlock. Why that is highly statistically overrepresented within certain communities is a question to be asked and answered, but it must be discussed.
Chicago, are you familiar with the terms blockbusting and redlining?
Redlining, yes, not blockbusting.
Blockbusting was back in the day, probably still to this day, real estate companies, agents, and property owners. They go to a nice white area, buy a house, rent the property to a black family intentionally at a below market rate, or just incentivize them to move in, giving them a 1-year lease. They then solicit all the homeowners and say, there goes the neighborhood, better sell now. Tricking these families into selling at a discounted rate. Let's say their house is worth $300,000. They'd say, look, with the black family moving in, property values are going down, so we'll buy your house for $280,000 from you cash on the spot. The families panic, would sell their houses. The real estate company would then evict the black family and then sell the properties back at their base market value rate and turn a profit. One of the most disgusting practices. They say it doesn't happen anymore. Maybe it doesn't. Redlining, of course, is when the real estate agents basically were like, we're going to make sure all of the black people live in one area. We need a new term for what Chicago does. Chicago has the example that I've used over the past several weeks pertaining to the National Guard is an area called the LeClaire Courts. It's where I grew up. I grew up about 2 or 3 blocks away. We never crossed, in my life, I never crossed 47th to the north because it was gang territory. What did the Democrats in Chicago do? They bulldozed all the houses and flattened them to the earth and then said, don't worry, we're gonna rebuild everything improved for this black community. They never did. It's been 16 years, and they have never rebuilt those homes. This is what the Democratic policies in these cities have always been. They tell us when we point out the high crime in the areas, we're racist. They say if we try to talk about how to solve the problem, we're racist. And then quietly, first of all, they instruct the police not to arrest the criminals. For political reasons, they don't want to look bad and lose voters. They release criminals from the jails. And then when they finally can't take it anymore because of the economic problems, they bulldoze the properties. All of the people who live there, their wealth destroyed, the anything they could have built in the community wiped out, scattered into the suburbs with nowhere to go. And this, which is pushed by Democrats, perpetuates crime and poverty in these black neighborhoods. I'd like to figure out how we can improve their lives, deal with the gang violence. And you know what? I'll tell you this. Instead of bulldozing all those houses, a couple of National Guard and police and some assistance with the local businesses may have actually alleviated a lot of these problems. The Democrats, in my opinion, perpetuate it on purpose.
I would say, there will be nobody who's going to have trouble believing that there's some incentive, political, policy-wise, to perpetuate this. What was I about to? I was going to say something about. I had on Reverend Tim Christopher, who's in Minnesota, talking about what happens when the crime gets so bad. There's an exodus, and there's an exodus as well, a small element of the criminals who then go to more fertile grounds for their criminality. Who was it? There was another stand-up comic who said, like, when people make it, they leave, what's colloquially referred to as the hood. They leave the bad areas and they go to the good areas. Nobody has the idea of staying there and trying to fix it internally from within with the wealth that they've acquired. It's not how it works. The reality is, it's like nobody likes the police until they need one. Nobody likes a lawyer until they need one. More police just correlate to a decrease in crime. To the extent that your police are not a total, corrupt.
Chicago has that problem.
I was going to say South, Mexico type of cartel police,
right?
But it's just a known fact. What contributes to this problem is demonizing the police, forcing out all the good cops, so the only ones you have left are the bad apples, disincentivizing police to even intervene, because you have an incident like with the Kim Potter, who does a tragic accident, whether you want to call it negligence or not, and then goes to jail. Derek Chauvin, who I was convinced he's a bad man. I was just convinced that there was a racial element to that attack in the beginning. Then I watched the trial. There was no chance for justice. And you demonize anybody who would ever think of getting into the police force.
Chauvin showed up after Floyd was already on the ground.
Once people appreciate not just what actually went down with Derek Chauvin, because it looked terrible. Yeah, he had his knee on the back of a guy, while you have a bunch of angry spectators saying, what are you doing? This is racism, because you're subduing a man who was I don't know if he was bigger than the man who just stabbed Iryna to death. But like, people don't understand, A, how quick it happens, and B, how people who are jacked up on drugs or mentally ill have superhuman strength. And if the worst thing that happens is someone putting their knee on their back while they arrest them, but the bottom line, you demonize all the cops. The cops are not signing up. Civilians who get involved themselves either get killed or arrested afterwards. And it's the perfect concoction for anarcho-tyranny, which seems to be the norm in these blue cities, in these blue states. Criminalize lawful behavior, demonize the police, and then scratch your head when crime is out of control, and then try to blame it on the fact that it's in a red state, but in a blue city. There's a trend. It's not the states that are the trend right now. It's the big blue cities. 10 of the 10 highest crime cities are all Democrat-run governors.
I think we're winning, though.
Or mayors. I don't want people calling me an idiot.
I do think we're winning. I think the narrative is shifting. I think the conversations are happening. I think Trump is working towards security. I hope the National Guard comes in. But, of course, the debate will carry on. We are out of time. So, Viva, thanks for hanging out. Where can people find you?
Viva Frei on Twitter, vivabarneslaw.locals.com on Locals, and Viva Frei on Rumble. I'm live at 3 o'clock today, so it'll be a good one.
Right on. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you then.
Thank you.
Take care. The great Viva Frei, as always, who will be live later on Rumble. Check him out. My friends, there is a simple surface level to the conversation on racial animosity in this country. And I think to outright deny the racial component is stupid. I think to outright deny the nature component, genetic component, and nurture, and to act like any one of these things is deterministic is stupid. I think the problem we have is people are different. Some people are racist. Some people aren't. We want to treat everybody equally under the law, but we have to have honest conversations about crime in this country. And for too long, we were censored and banned if we pointed out that there are racist black people who attack Asians, like in the Stop Asian Hate thing, and white people, like this guy, reportedly, maybe, I'm not so sure, but it happens. Racism is a bad thing. I don't care if you're white, Asian, black, Jewish, whatever it may be. We should treat people equally under the law. If you want to have hate in your heart for a certain group of people, you're allowed to do it. I don't care. Okay? I don't care. I'm not a fan of that. Just when you commit crimes against people, that's the issue. And so if we have in this country narratives from the left about the evil oppressor of the white man, and then you see that a black person in the United States is 26 times higher, 26 times more likely to attack a white person than a white person or a black person, maybe the leftist racist narratives against white people is driving racial animosity, and we want to stop that. So maybe one day, people of all races can hold hands and sing songs under a rainbow. Until then, I do think we're winning. And I think it's good for people of all backgrounds, and maybe we'll figure this one out. We're going to get you geared up on your way to hang out with our friend Russell Brand. So smash the like button, share the show with everyone you know, and you can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Make sure you come back 8 p.m. for Timcast IRL live. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all in the next segment.